Welcome back to the English Prep Podcast, everyone. Today, we're tackling something I know can feel like a real hurdle when you're getting ready for exams like IELTS and TOEFL. It's how to speed up your reading in English without feeling like you're just, skimming the surface and missing everything.
Absolutely. That ticking clock during the reading sections, it creates a lot of pressure, doesn't it?
It really does.
It's that feeling of needing to choose between carefully understanding each sentence and actually finishing the questions in time. It's a tough spot to be in.
It is. So our goal today is to really dig into some practical ways you can become a more efficient and accurate English reader.
Good plan.
We want to arm you with some solid strategies you can actually use. Think of this as your personal guide to getting through those challenging exam texts without sacrificing comprehension.
And like any good preparation, it kind of starts with understanding where you are right now, doesn't it?
What are some of the common habits that might be slowing down your reading, maybe without you even realizing it?
Okay, yeah, let's think about this. One thing I know a lot of learners experience is what's called subvocalization.
Ah, the inner voice.
Exactly. It's almost like you're silently speaking each word in your head as you read it. It feels natural, but it can actually hold you back because, you can process visual information much faster than you can actually say words, even silently.
That's a great way to put it. It's like having a narrator in your head who can only read at speaking pace.
Right. And another thing many people do is regression.
Going back.
Yeah, going back and rereading sentences or even whole paragraphs. Sometimes it's because, your mind wandered for a second.
Sure, happens to everyone.
But other times it's just a habit, maybe a lack of trust in your initial understanding.
Oh, definitely. Your eyes just automatically jump back, even if you think you got it the first time. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
It is. And then there's also reading word by word.
The single word focus.
Instead of seeing groups of words together, you're focusing on each individual one. It's like and trying to appreciate a painting by looking at each tiny brushstroke instead of seeing the whole picture.
That's a perfect analogy. It takes so much longer that way.
So much longer.
Exactly. So before we even talk about fixing these things, it can be really insightful to just get a sense of your current reading speed, like a baseline.
Okay. How would someone do that?
You could try timing yourself, reading a page or maybe a short article in English. See how many words you can read in a minute and still actually understand the main ideas. That gives you a starting point, something to measure your progress against later.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Get your baseline. So we've identified some potential roadblocks: subvocalization, regression, word-by-word reading. Now let's talk about how to actually become a faster reader. You mentioned being more strategic.
Precisely. It's key. Effective reading isn't always about meticulously reading every single word with the same level of intensity, right?
Right.
That's where techniques like skimming and scanning really come into play.
Okay, skimming and scanning. Let's break those down. Skimming first.
Sure. Think of skimming as quickly surveying a piece of writing to get the general gist, the main idea.
Like a quick overview.
Exactly. You're looking for the main topics and the overall flow without getting bogged down in every single detail.
So what are the specific things we should be looking for when we're skimming? Like practically.
Okay, good question. Focus on the first sentence of each paragraph that often contain the main idea, the topic sentence.
Right.
Pay attention to any headings and subheadings. They act like a roadmap for the text.
Makes sense.
And also, notice any words that are maybe repeated frequently or seem to stand out, bold text, italics, that kind of thing. Those are likely key terms or concepts.
Right, like picking out the landmarks on a map before you zoom in. Okay, I get skimming. So how is scanning different from that?
Scanning is much more targeted, much more specific.
All right.
It's when you're searching for specific pieces of information within a text, like a name, a date, a number, a specific keyword, without reading everything in between.
Oh, okay.
For example, if an exam question asks for a particular year or the name of a scientist mentioned, you would scan the text specifically looking for numbers or capitalized words, proper nouns. It's like using a keyword search, but, with your eyes.
Ah, I get it. So skimming for the overall picture, the main ideas, and scanning when you need to find a specific fact quickly.
Spot on.
For exams, those techniques could really save valuable time, couldn't they? Helping you pinpoint answers without having to read entire passages word for word.
Exactly. That's the whole point in an exam context. Efficiency.
Okay. Super useful.
Now, another really useful technique to boost your reading speed is something called chunking. Have you come across that term before?
Chunking. I think I've heard it, yeah. But can you explain what it means specifically for reading?
Sure. Chunking basically involves training yourself to read groups of words together.
Okay.
Like in meaningful phrases, rather than processing each word individually. Our brains are actually very good at recognizing patterns and taking in information in these small chunks.
Right, like common phrases we see all the time.
Exactly. You recognize them almost instantly.
So instead of seeing individual letters that form words, we're training our brain to see groups of words that form meaning together. Can you give an example?
Yeah, okay. Imagine the sentence. The new research findings were surprisingly insightful.
Okay.
Instead of reading, the new research findings were surprisingly insightful one by one, you could train your eyes to see it more like, the new research findings were surprisingly insightful. Say, 2 chunks.
Okay, yeah, I see how that could speed things up. Fewer stops for your eyes, right? Less stopping and starting across the line.
Precisely. It reduces how often your eyes need to fixate to stop and move across the page.
So how can we actually practice doing this? It sounds like something that would take some, well, getting used to.
It does take practice. One helpful exercise is to physically guide your eyes across the page. You can use your finger or maybe a pen.
Okay.
Focus on moving your guide in smooth, short sweeps that encompass these word chunks rather than stopping on each individual word.
So moving it faster than you normally read.
A little faster, yeah, to push yourself gently. It helps train your eyes to move more efficiently and take in more words per fixation. With practice, your eyes will naturally start to group words together without needing the physical guide anymore.
That's a really practical tip, using a finger or pen as a pacer. I like that. Now, what about before we even start reading a text closely? Is there anything we can do to prepare ourselves that might, ultimately help with speed and understanding?
Absolutely. Definitely. Spending just a little bit of time, maybe 15 to 30 seconds, not long, on what we call pre-reading can make a significant difference.
Pre-reading. Okay.
It's like getting a quick preview before watching a movie. You get a sense of what it's about.
Right. So what exactly should we be doing in those crucial seconds?
Okay, start by reading the title, obviously, and any subheadings. This gives you a quick overview of the topic and how the information is likely structured. Then quickly read maybe the first and last sentence of each paragraph. These often contain the main idea or a summary point for that section.
First and last sentence. Got it.
Also, quickly scan for any words that are bolded or italicized, as well as any numbers or names. These are often signals for key information that exam questions might focus on.
So it's like building a mental framework of the text before you dive into all the details. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
It does.
Your brain has some context already, so it's easier to fit the new information in as you read more closely.
Exactly. It improves both your speed because you're not going completely cold and your comprehension because you have a better sense of what to expect and where the text is going.
That's really useful. Okay, so pre-reading is key.
Now, thinking specifically about exams again, it's important to remember that you're not usually expected to memorize every single tiny detail in the passage.
That's a good reminder. It feels like you should, but you probably don't need to.
Right. The questions usually focus on specific types of information.
So what kind of information should we be prioritizing then when we're reading those exam passages? What should we be looking out for?
Typically, you'll be asked about the main ideas of the text or specific sections.
Okay.
The supporting details or evidence for those ideas.
Right.
The meaning of certain vocabulary words within the context of the passage. And sometimes your ability to make inferences like reading between the lines or understanding the author's attitude or purpose.
So it's really about grasping the core arguments, the evidence used to back them up, and maybe the author's viewpoint.
Precisely. So knowing this helps you direct your attention more effectively.
How so?
Well, you can focus more on things like those topic sentences we mentioned, which usually appear at the beginning of a paragraph.
Right. Cool.
Look for transition words like, however, furthermore, in contrast, they signal shifts in ideas or connections. And pay attention to the examples and explanations the author provides to support their claims. Don't get too bogged down in every single descriptive word or minor example unless it directly relates to a question you need to answer.
Okay. That helps narrow down our focus quite a bit. Be selective.
Exactly. Be an active, selective reader.
Let's loop back quickly to how our eyes move when we read. We talked about minimizing those fixations, those brief stops our eyes make. How can we consciously work on that beyond just chunking?
Well, using that pacer we mentioned, your finger or a pen is one of the most effective ways.
Right, the physical guide.
Yeah. Guide your eyes smoothly across each line. trying to maintain a consistent, slightly challenging pace. This encourages your eyes to take in more words with each fixation and reduces those unnecessary stops.
And what about regression? That habit of jumping back?
That takes conscious effort. You have to make a deliberate choice to reduce regression. Trust your initial reading unless you have a very clear reason to believe you missed something crucial. Tell yourself, keep moving forward.
Easier said than done sometimes.
It is. But practice helps build that confidence. And with practice, you can also train yourself to expand your peripheral vision slightly. Try to consciously take in maybe 2 or 3 words with each glance, rather than focusing sharply on just one.
So it's almost like retraining our eye muscles and habits to be more efficient, smoother, and less jerky in their movements across the page.
Exactly. And that smoother, more efficient eye movement directly translates to faster reading, naturally.
Okay. Makes sense. Now, another factor you touched on briefly that plays a huge role in reading speed is vocabulary.
Oh, massive. Absolutely huge.
Yeah, I can see that. If you're constantly encountering words you don't know, it's bound to really slow you down as you stop and try to figure them out.
Absolutely. Every time you stumble over an unfamiliar word, your brain pauses. It disrupts your reading flow, breaks your concentration, and definitely impacts your comprehension speed.
So building a strong vocabulary is fundamental then.
It really is. It's fundamental for becoming a faster, more confident reader in English, especially with academic-style texts.
So what's the most effective way for English language learners preparing for these exams like IELTS or TOEFL to actually build that relevant vocabulary?
Good question. I'd say focus on learning high-frequency academic vocabulary.
Okay.
These are the words that appear most often in academic articles, research papers, textbooks, the kind of texts you'll find in these exams. You can find lists online like the academic word list or lists specifically for IELTS TOEFL prep.
Right. Target the likely words.
Exactly. Also, learn about word families. Understand how different forms of a word like, say, analyze, analysis, and analytical are related. That expands your understanding massively from learning just one root word.
Ah, that's smart. Learning the whole family.
And crucially, practice using context clues. This is so important for speed. When you encounter a new word, don't immediately stop. Look at the surrounding words and sentences first.
Try to guess the meaning.
Yes. They often provide strong hints about the word's meaning, allowing you to make an educated guess and keep reading without immediately reaching for a dictionary and breaking your flow.
So it's not just about memorizing lists of isolated words,
No.
but also about understanding how they function within a sentence, how different forms relate, and how to use the context to your advantage.
You got it. That holistic approach is much more effective for reading fluency.
Okay. Now, we've talked a lot about reading faster, increasing speed, but we need to make sure our understanding, our comprehension, doesn't suffer in the process, right?
Speed isn't useful if you don't get it.
That's the critical point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Speed without understanding is, well, it's counterproductive, especially in an exam setting where you need to answer questions accurately.
So how can we actively check our comprehension when we're trying to read more quickly?
One really powerful technique is active recall.
Active recall.
Yeah. After you finish reading a paragraph or maybe a short section, take a brief pause, just a second or two, and ask yourself, what was the main point of what I just read?
Okay.
Try to summarize it quickly in your own words. You could even jot down a quick note, just a few keywords. So it's like a mini self-quiz after each part of the text to force yourself to process it.
Exactly. You can even challenge yourself further. Try to anticipate potential questions someone might ask about what you just read.
Oh, interesting.
And see if you can answer them without looking back at the text immediately. This active engagement really strengthens your memory and reinforces your understanding.
And presumably reduces the need to reread later if you didn't quite get it the first time.
Precisely. It makes your first read much more effective.
That sounds like a really solid way to make sure you're actually processing the information, not just letting your eyes, scan the words without anything sinking in.
It keeps you engaged.
Now, all these strategies are great to know: skimming, scanning, chunking, pre-reading, active recall, vocabulary work. But how do we actually put them into practice specifically for the English language exams? How do we bridge the gap from theory to exam day?
Yeah, that's the crucial step. The absolute best way to see real improvement is to practice with authentic exam materials under realistic, timed conditions.
Okay, so using actual past papers or official practice tests.
Yes, exactly. Use official IELTS or TOEFL reading sections and strictly adhere to the time limits given for each section or passage.
Right, simulate the pressure.
Simulate the pressure.
Yeah.
And during your practice sessions, consciously focus on applying these techniques. Tell yourself, okay, for this passage, I'm going to skim first, then read the questions, then scan for answers. Make it intentional.
Actively practice the skills.
Actively practice. And then, after each timed practice session, take the time to thoroughly review your answers. Don't just check if they're right or wrong.
What else should we do?
Pay close attention to why you got each question right or wrong. If you got it wrong, was it because you misunderstood the question, misunderstood the text, couldn't find the information fast enough, ran out of time?
Analyzing the mistakes.
Exactly. This helps you identify patterns in the question types, understand the specific kind of information the examiners are looking for, and maybe spot any common tricks or potential pitfalls in the exam format.
So it's about simulating the actual exam environment as much as possible to get comfortable with the time pressure and the types of questions. And like with any skill, I imagine consistent practice is key to seeing improvement over time.
Absolutely. Consistency is everything.
How can learners stay motivated and track their progress along the way?
Setting clear, achievable, and measurable goals is really important for motivation.
Like what kind of goals?
Well, for example, you could aim to increase your reading speed by, say, 20 words per minute each week while maintaining 80% comprehension on practice quizzes.
Okay, specific.
Or you could set a goal to complete a full IELTS reading section within the 60 minutes, or maybe even aim for 18 minutes per passage. Something concrete.
Right, and how to track it.
Use tools. Use a stopwatch when you practice. There are also reading apps or websites that can track your speed and test your comprehension. Regularly reviewing your progress, seeing those numbers improve, even slightly, can be very motivating and help you see how far you've come.
That makes a lot of sense. Track it to see the gains. So it seems it's really all about being more mindful and strategic about how we read in English, isn't it? Rather than just trying to brute force ourselves to go faster.
That sums it up perfectly. It's smart reading, not just fast reading.
By understanding some of these common habits that slow us down, like subvocalization or regression, actively using techniques like skimming, scanning, and chunking, focusing on key information, building our vocabulary smartly, and constantly checking our understanding through active recall.
Yeah.
We can definitely become more efficient and confident readers for exams like IELTS and TOEFL.
Without a doubt.
And that consistent, targeted practice under realistic conditions seems absolutely crucial to bring it all together.
It really is. It's about transforming yourself into a more effective and engaged reader, and that active approach will make all the difference when you're facing those exam reading passages.
Well, I really hope this deep dive into reading efficiency has given all of you listening some valuable insights and practical techniques you can start using right away.
Hope so too.
Now, maybe think about your next English reading practice session. What's one new strategy from today that you're going to try? Just pick one to start. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive here on the English Prep Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.